awesome. Thank you, Miles. So I love it. First speaker of the day. That means y'all are either wide awake, ready to rock and roll, or you're hungover from last night. So we're about to find out. Sales guy goes out, calls on a farmer. He gets out there. The farmer's very kind and says, hey, why don't you sit down? We'll talk a little bit. And they start having this big conversation. But the sales guy can't help but look over and notice that the farmer beside him there has this pig, and it's a little cute pig. It's got a bow on its head. The farmer's just kind of scratching its neck. It looks like it's a pet. So at some point, he finally gets the best of him. He just can't take it anymore, and he looks at the farmer and says, I'm sorry, hold on, I'll get back to this in a little bit. But I'm just curious. I've never seen a farmer with a pig as a pet before. And it's just kind of an odd situation. The guy goes, oh, well, let me tell you about this pig. He says, this is not any ordinary pig. He said, one day, little Susie, she was about 3 years old. She was out wandering around our backyard. She comes over to this big, the pond we have in the back, and was chasing a butterfly or something, fell right in that pond. She would have totally not survived if it hadn't been for that pig. That pig ran, grabbed her by the back of the shirt, and pulled her out, saved her life. He goes, man, that's incredible. He said, yeah, another time little Timmy was out, and he was kind of playing in the backyard. He was about 4 years old, and this snake was coming up on Timmy, and he was about to bite him when that pig ran out there, grabbed that snake by the tail, flung it around his head a few times, hit his head against a tree, totally killed that snake. Amazing thing, saved little Timmy's life. He goes, oh my goodness, that's incredible. And then he notices that the pig is missing a leg. So he says to the farmer, he says, well, just out of curiosity, and the farmer says, hey, look, I've got story after story like that. And he goes, just out of curiosity, I noticed, it's missing a leg. Was it in one of those adventures that the pig lost one of his legs? And the farmer said, nah, but I tell you what, a pig that special, you don't eat them all at one time. Okay. That's either really funny or just disgusting to y'all. What I want to talk to you about is company culture, because I see company after company taking their golden people, right, and just eating them basically one leg at a time. So I want to talk about retention. I want to talk about how you build a company of owners. I wrote my book, A Company of Owners. It was based on a conversation I had with the CEO of a $20 billion oil and gas company. And we were talking in the hallway one day, and I said, Dave, you need to fire all your employees. And he said, Martin, what are you talking about? We can't fire all our employees. I said, no, you don't want employees. You want people who act like owners. So I'm convinced, I ran my own business for 20 years. For the last 10 years, I've been consulting for mom and pops to Fortune 100 companies. I've been in and out of a lot of different companies, a ton of different industries. And in my experience, there are two kinds of employees out there. The first one I call Stacy. Stacy is a rock star. We have any Stacys in the room? By the way, all the Stacys love me because I made her the rock star employee in my book. Stacy shows up. She's ready to rock and roll. Nobody has to tell her what to do. She's figuring things out. She's coming up with new ideas. She's constantly tweaking things. She's looking for new ways for the company to make money. I mean, she's just on it. She really, truly acts like an owner. There's Stacy. Then there's what I call in the book Crawley. Crawley is a zombie employee. I'm assuming we don't have any Crawleys in the room. I thought I was pretty safe with that. Crawley is a zombie employee. Zombies, do we have any zombie fans? Okay, a few of you. So what's a zombie live for? They live to eat, and in a corporate environment, that means just drawing a paycheck. So zombies show up, they kind of go through the motions, they mail it in. When a zombie bumps up against a chain link fence, do they go looking for a pair of wire cutters to figure out how to get through the fence, yes or no? If they bump up against a chain link fence, do they start looking around for a way to get around that chain link fence, yes or no? Okay, y'all are gonna have to be louder than that. No, absolutely not. You know what they do? They keep bumping up against that fence until they get enough zombies behind them, hoping to reach critical mass, and then they can just topple that fence right over and just keep on their little zombie ways. That's a zombie employee. Gallup shows year after year consistently what percentage in a typical company What percentage of Stacy's are there and what percentage of zombies? Let's go with Stacy's. What percentage of highly engaged employees are there at a typical US company? 5? That's really dark. 5? Wow. 10? Then a little 15. Give me 15. I feel like it's actually 29%. So it's not quite as dark as y'all are painting it. But that's still pretty darn dark, right? That means 1/3 of your workforce is showing up and actually being engaged, and the rest are walking the hallways like this. I don't know about you, I think that's ridiculous. That's like a 6-string guitar with only 2 strings working, a 6-cylinder engine, you only got 2 cylinders working, you got a 3-legged stool, only 1 leg, not going to work. So why is that? Why do you think engagement is so low at your typical company? Ideas. Not invested. Good. There are no wrong answers here. What else? Sorry? Management. Okay. Yeah, people say that people don't leave companies, they leave managers. Absolutely. What else? Lack of motivation. Absolutely. Anybody else? They're not empowered. All of those things are true and more. All of those come into play. I think the big one is people are flat out bored. They're bored to death with what the company stands for, what they're about, what their job is, because they're not empowered, because they've got managers that are just, sucking the life out of them. Daniel Burnham said this, make no small plans. They have no ability to stir people's blood. Blood stirring, getting people excited and energized. A lot of managers are not only not blood stirrers, they're blood suckers, right? They just sap the life right out. So how do we go about changing that? Well, I'm going to give you a couple of company culture killers, and then I want to move on and talk about how do we enlist the right people? How do we create this real company of owners? And by the way, I don't think that's a pie in the sky. Oh, it'd be really cool if. I know it's doable. I've seen it happen. I've seen companies who are actually out there doing it. So let's talk about a couple of company culture killers. I had a professor before, he used to ask a question, how much cow dung does it take to spoil a bowl of ice cream? Okay, let that soak in for a little bit. I actually did the keynote for the IACDV, the International Association of Ice Cream Distributors and Vendors, this last year. And I asked him that. I could not wait to ask that because it's all these ice cream vendors, right? It's going to be awesome. By the way, afterwards you go into this big hall and there's ice cream everywhere, just as much ice cream as you can possibly eat. So I told him that. They thought that was funny. And then I made some joke about, actually it may be fit in today's culture. It's organic, it might fit as a clean label type item. And then I made a Bluebell reference, okay? They groaned at me. They said, too soon. And I definitely shouldn't do that in Dallas. So we're just going to skip that. So how much cow dung does it take to spoil a bowl of ice cream? So my question for you is, how many poisonous employees or low performers does it take to spoil a company? Not very many, just one, right? So I'm going to ask you a question. Raise your hand if at a company you're familiar with, it may be your company or some other company, if you're familiar with 1 to 10 employees that should be fired immediately for being low performers or for being poisonous. Raise your hand. Okay, look around the room. Why are those people still there? By the way, if you're the one, then, let's talk afterwards. We'll get a little coaching session going or something. Consistently, I don't care where I do this talk, that's the response I get. We've got these low-performing, poisonous people, and that is the quickest way to drain the life right out of a company. A few years ago, I had the privilege of a buddy of mine hook me up with some hot passes to go to a NASCAR event. I live in Dallas, right here in Dallas. Never been to a NASCAR event. I thought this is going to be amazing. And I went really for one reason, a couple of reasons. One, people had told me, once you've been, you'll love it. It's fantastic. The energy, the cars, the speed, the smells, it's great. So with the hot pass, you get to go down into the pits. You get to be right up there next to the track. And I wanted to watch the pit crews. because I knew there was some amazing teamwork going on when you've got 4 people who can pump 180 pounds of fuel into a car. They can swap out 4 tires. They can clean the windshield, squirt some water in the driver's mouth, do all of this and get that car back out on the track in 12 seconds. It's just a syncopated dance that is dizzying to watch. So let me ask you this. If you've got 3 people on that pit crew that can do that in 12 seconds and one takes 1 minute and 45, how long is it going to take to get the car back out on the track? Come on, this is pretty simple. 1 minute and 45, because you're only as strong as your weakest link. So I went to see that, I videoed a lot of that, but here was the part that was really crazy cool to me. So we're sitting there, these cars, boom, 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 zooming around, and then there's a slowdown. There was some oil on the track, maybe there's an accident on the other side. We couldn't see what happened, but they bring out the pace car. The pace car comes out, and all of a sudden, these 200-mile-an-hour capable race cars slow down to a crawl, and they're following this 50-mile-an-hour car around the track. Well, what happened? All that separation you had before, that capability, they're all stacked up there in nice, neat little rows. Most boring thing ever. If that was the whole NASCAR event, nobody would go. So I'm watching this, and then I just happened to capture on film when that pace car pulled off into the pit to release those cars again, and I'm telling you, worth every minute of going out there just to watch the dizzying speed when those cars re-accelerated and took off. Low performers, poison. They are pace cars in your organization. You need to figure out who they are. You need to manage them up, manage them out. Okay, number 2 is what I call friction. So I need a volunteer. It's one of you 2. Okay, Garrett, Jessica voluntold you. Come on up. So we're going to do a little demonstration. So Garrett, how are you?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm great. Who do you work for?
Fireball Cafe.
Okay, awesome. So I was assuming it's something in the food business. So Garrett loves his job. He loves Fireball Cafe. It's fantastic. But he comes into a whole bunch of money. He wins the lottery or a family member leaves him some, and he decides to go start his own business. And he is so stoked about this. He's had this idea for a really long time, and he can't wait to get this business going. So he gets out and he gets set up and he's ready to open on, opening day. And his business, by the way, is called this. I trade $1 bills for $5 bills, okay? I trade $1 bills for $5 bills. Now, how many of y'all think that sounds like a great business model? Raise your hand. What if I told you people were lined up around the block to make this transaction? Now, does this sound like a great business model? Absolutely. So it's day 1. He's got his big stack of 1s. There you go. First customer comes in with a 5. Hey, man, so awesome. Thank you. Oh, this is great. Hey, thank you, brother. This is fantastic. Oh, my goodness. I'm so grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay. There's actually a 10 later in there. All right. So if this is your business, how fast do you want to make this transaction?
As soon as possible.
Pretty darn fast, right? In fact, I'm going to go out there and enlist, a bunch of people. Hey, come up here. I'm going to pay you 50 cents every time you do that little flip because your profit margin is absurd. Okay, I'm going to take all my money back. Okay. You can pick a book out. Well, hold on. We'll get you one from the back. We'll pick you one from the back. I might need these in a little bit. So, awesome. Let's hear it for Garrett. Silly idea. Who's going to start a business like that? Let me ask you a question. Raise your hand if you've ever waited 20 minutes or longer at a bar to get a beer or a drink. Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you've waited 30 minutes or longer at a bar to get a beer. Okay, keep your hands up. These are all the alcoholics in the room. I'm just kidding. I got my hand up. Come on. Is that not the bar business? I walk up to the bar. I hand you a $5 bill. You hand me a 50-cent Miller Lite, right? That's the bar business. I walk up. I hand you a $10 bill. You give me 70 cents worth of vodka and soda, whatever it is. In fact, is that not every business? Every business is about making money off of that transaction. So why in the world would you want to make it difficult for people to make that transaction? So imagine if I come in and Garrett goes, oh yeah, I want to make this trade, but first I need you to fill out 4 forms. I'm going to make you stand in a really, really long line because we're really inefficient in the way that we do this, right? No, you agree, you want to make that transaction as fast as you can. 2017, the art of doing business in 2017 is about reducing friction. It always has been, but it's really important now. Who, by the way, is the king of eliminating friction? Bam! Amazon. How many Amazon users do we have in the room? Wow. Okay, take a look at that. I love me some Amazon. I'm doing something, start talking to my new buddy back here. He says, man, you got to read this book. This book's going to change your life. It's going to be fantastic. Guess what I'm doing? In the conversation, it's not even rude or abrupt because I can, within 2 clicks, boom, boom, buy now with 1 click, boom, done. We go, I speak, a lot of places. We travel all over. And when we get back, it's like Christmas because there's this little stack of packages, mainly books. But we buy everything off Amazon. Why? Because Amazon has made it really easy to buy stuff. They've eliminated the friction. Hey, you want to return? Great, no problem. Just print a label, have it sitting outside your door. We'll come, UPS come pick it up. They have eliminated friction. So I want you to go back to your business and I want you to look at the points of friction in 2 places. Your customers and your internal points of friction. What are the things at your company that make it difficult for people to get their work done? Because that will kill a culture quicker than just about anything. I've got, we just did a Beast Well video on broken, and I talked in there about broken equipment, broken processes, broken, bureaucracy that you have to bump up against. Anything that makes it difficult for people to achieve or become is a company culture killer. Okay, so let's talk about culture. Anybody know the name Lou Gerstner? Recognize Lou Gerstner? Lou Gerstner wrote a book called Who Says Elephants Can't Dance? And it was from his turnaround of IBM. Back years ago, IBM was in some serious trouble. The government was saying, we can't have our blue chip stock go belly up. This is just not cool. So Gerstner comes in and he started to turn that company around. He did a number of things. One, he got them to stop wearing the same uniform and march in little lines like penguins, right? He outlawed acronyms. No more acronyms at IBM because he showed up and nobody knew what he was talking about. By the way, very similar story. Had the privilege of introducing Alan Mulally a few years ago, and Mulally was the CEO of Boeing that came over to be the new CEO of Ford when all of the trouble was going on in the automotive industry. Mulally said, I knew I was in trouble when I showed up day one. He was telling me this. He said, when I showed up day one and they showed up at the airport to pick me up in a Land Rover. He's like, Ford Motor Company? We don't even know who we are. So Gerstner goes into IBM, makes this big turnaround. Gerstner said this in the book. He said, when I first got to IBM, I knew that culture was a very important part of changing around a company. He said along with, it was a very important part of the game, along with strategy, along with vision, along with all these other things. He said halfway through the project, I completely changed my mind. Culture was not an important part of the game. Culture is the game. He said, you don't change the culture, you don't change the company. So this stuff that we're talking about, you want to know why people stay? It's because of culture. You want to know why people leave? It's because of culture. So how do we get our arms around something that is so important? And by the way, every company represented here, every company in the world within spitting distance or anywhere around the globe, do they have a culture? Do they not have a culture? They have a culture. I love it when somebody comes on the radio and says, there's a lot of weather in Texas today. There's always a lot of weather, okay? We just have weather, that's a constant. You have a culture. Is it the kind of culture that you're looking for or not? So what does that start with? It starts with hiring the right people. We know that the success of any business is about what? The 3 success factors for a business traditionally have been location, location, location. Where's that thing located? I've seen some great businesses, or not great businesses, but in a great location that just shut their doors. I think it's about people, people, people. So it's got to start with what Jim Collins talked about a long time ago, get the right people on the bus, okay? So you got to get them on the bus, and then you got to figure out how to keep them on the bus. So what do you think there are the reasons that people stay at companies? What are some reasons people stay at companies? Recognition. What else? They feel they're contributing to something. What else? Good environment, okay? There's all sorts of really great reasons that people stay at companies. There's also some negative reasons. They stay because they can't get another job, right? Those are the people you want staying. I can't get a job anywhere else, so I'm just going to stay here and just zombie out. Or they're fearful, or all sorts of those kinds of factors. People typically think it's about the money. The money is a very important factor, but it is just table stakes. It is baseline. I could name some companies, Chick-fil-A, Zappos. You know, Zappos is a company that's pretty fascinating because people line up around the block to go to work at Zappos in their call center for $12 an hour. I don't know if they're still doing this, but they used to go through a training program with their employees. You want to come to work, we take you through this program. At the end of the program, they say this to you, okay, we're going to pay you $2,500 to leave and not take this job, okay? Because they wanted to find out who's really in this for the money and who really wants to come be a part of our team. We only want people who are excited about it. Shinola, anybody familiar with this brand? Oh my goodness, we just toured the Shinola plant in Detroit. I bought my fancy new Shinola watch. This is a brand that's blowing up, but in large part because of the culture they've built. Netflix. Netflix survived when Blockbuster was just going on the downward spiral. Somebody said something to the CEO of Blockbuster when he first got there, and they said something about Netflix, and he goes, "What's a Netflix? They're nobody." Uh-oh, oops, big misdirect, right? So how do you want to go about creating a company of owners? You got to start with a strong identity. Anybody recognize the name Lynn Howe? Anybody know that name? Lynn Howe. We have any Olympic fans here? Any Olympic fans? Anybody watch the Olympics? Nobody in this entire room watches any of the Olympics ever in the history of ever. Okay, whether you do or don't, it's a cool story. So 2008, it's the opening night of the Olympics, and you know how that happens. They have the big stadium, they put on the big show, the athletes come in, they go around. It's in Beijing, China. So a huge delegation, the Chinese delegation. In the Olympics, does the host delegation come out first or last? They come out last. So they're holding up, they're coming out, and everybody's excited to see the Chinese delegation come out. And it's a huge honor to be able to carry the flag and lead the delegation of athletes out. Hard choice. This time they picked Yao Ming. Anybody recognize that name? Basketball fans? Big 7-footer, played in the NBA, big old Yao Ming. So here comes Yao Ming holding the flag, and everybody's like, oh, that's so cool, what a great selection. And then they look down his arm, and they follow his arm down, and there's this little 9-year-old boy who he's holding on to his hand for dear life, and he's hurrying to try to keep up with those big, long legs of Yao Ming. Especially in the West, they announced him, his name is Lin Hao. People are like, who the heck is Lin Hao? He's clearly not an athlete. What's he doing coming in with the delegation? It turns out, earlier that year in the Sichuan province, there had been one of the worst earthquakes in the history of ever. In fact, 70,000 people died as a result of that earthquake. And Lin Hao happened to be sitting with a bunch of other classmates in his school when the ceiling came toppling down on top of them. Horrific. Crushed under all of that rubble. Somehow, Lin Hao figures out a way to crawl his way out. He gets out into the sunlight. He's all banged up. He's all bruised up. It's a terrible scene. And he gets out into daylight. He's like, oh, whew, I'm alive. I made it. And then he did something really incredible. He turned around and went back into the rubble and started pulling out classmate after classmate. So these classmates were passed out. He had to carry them out of this rubble. When the relief workers showed up, in all, I think there were 9 little kids sitting around in a circle, the sole survivors of that school, of that earthquake. Lin Hao was sitting in the circle with them, and he was singing songs so that they would be distracted and not think about what had just happened. When they come in and they see this heroic deal, they go to Lin Hao and they say, Lin, we don't understand. You risked your life. Why would you go back in? You got out. You were safe, everything. Why in the world would you do that? It was just a huge sacrifice on your part. And he looks at them with incredulity and says, I had to. It's my job. I'm a hall monitor. It's my job to take care of the other kids. Okay. I love that story because of the heroism with it, but I also love it because here's a kid, a 9-year-old, that so identifies with a title, with a job, that he is willing to do anything to fulfill the responsibilities of that job. How do the people at your company identify with the company, if at all? What does it mean to be a part of your company? Do they wear it as a badge of honor? Or do they wear it as something, I'm working at so-and-so just till I get something done? Let me ask you a question. What do the Masons, the Boy Scouts, the Marines, fraternities, and, well, I won't say that one anyway. Take those 4. What do they all have in common? There's some essence or meaning about being a part of that. When a Marine meets another Marine, it's like, oh, wow, where'd you serve? What was going on? The whole deal. Masons, secret society with the handshakes and the stuff they've had for generations and generations. When you're part of a fraternity, you're always a part of that fraternity. There's crazy stuff for most of those that you have to do to become a part of it. And then when you become a part of it, it means something to you. I think a lot of reason that people are not engaged, as I said, is they're just flat out bored. They're doing meaningless work for a meaningless company, something they're not excited about. And by the way, that has nothing to do with the kind of business that you're in. It has everything to do with the amount of meaning you attach around that. Anybody heard the story of Johnny the Bagger? Anybody? Great little book, highly recommend it. Johnny went to work at a grocery store. I think he was a little mentally challenged, but he was a great kid, and they hired him to be a sacker. So Johnny goes to work for this grocery store, and his job is just to sack the groceries. He goes home one day and he says, Dad, I'm frustrated. And he said, why? He said, everybody that comes through that store just seems bored. They just seem upset. They seem like they're having a bad day. Everybody's in a bad mood, and I want to figure out a way to cheer these people up. So his dad says, okay, so they start thinking about it. And what Johnny comes up with is they start printing up all of these little sayings. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. You look really beautiful today. Stop and smell the flowers, whatever. They come up with all these little fun sayings, but just kind of to inspire people. They print them out on some big sheets. They chop them up. They get these little strips. Johnny goes to work the next day, and he starts dropping those in the grocery bags when he's sacking people's groceries. Fast forward, it's about 2 or 3 weeks later. Manager is sitting up in the little manager's nest, where you look out over what's going on. Oh my goodness, there's a crisis. Aisle 2, people are lined up. We don't have enough checkers. He's like, hey, I need more checkers to the front. We got a long line up here. Everybody get up here, Then he starts looking, and aisle 3 has somebody, aisle 7 has a checker, aisle 9 has a checker. Nobody's in those lines. So he can't figure it out. So he goes to aisle 2 and he starts saying, hey, come over to register 3. We've got people on register. No, I'm gonna stay right here. I wanna stay in Johnny's line. He starts interviewing people and finds out what's going on, and here are the kind of stories he heard. I used to hate coming to the grocery store. In fact, I would do it once a month, maybe twice a month. It was a big ordeal. I have to show up. I did it all at one time. I hated it. Now, if I'm within 10 miles of the store and I need something, and I know Johnny's working, guess what? I come to the store just so I can go through Johnny's line and get that little strip of paper of encouragement. Here's a kid who discovered had to bring meaning into a grocery store in a really powerful way. So, if you take most mission statements at most companies, they read something like this. Our mission is to provide the value for our constituency over a prolonged period of time due to our 35 years of ongoing care about the quality of the procedures that, right? Ridiculous. You can take most mission statements, take it off this company's wall, and go put it on another company's wall, and nobody would know the difference. Contrast that with what I call a BAM, a business actionable mantra. Say it with me, BAM. Okay, a BAM is different altogether. It's a mantra. Raise your hand if you've ever been to, stayed in, heard of, driven by, had a drink at a Ritz-Carlton. Anybody? Raise your hand. Okay, good. I thought maybe I'd have my bases covered with that. So what kind of experience would you expect to have at the Ritz-Carlton? What was it? Top notch. Anybody else? It's off the chart. It's exceptional. I don't care where I do this talk. I've never had somebody go, it's all right. You know, maybe some poor soul had a bad experience one time. But for the most part, consistently people say, amazing. Now, does it make a difference which Ritz-Carlton you're in around the world? If you're in one in Hong Kong or one in Bangkok or one in Dallas, Texas, does it make a difference? Absolutely not. How in the heck are they able to marshal thousands of employees all over the world and deliver that consistency of service? Part of it is because of their BAM, their mantra. Does anybody know what the mantra is for the Ritz-Carlton? We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And it covers everybody from the person washing the dishes to the VP of sales, to the valet, the people cleaning the room. It covers everybody. Did you treat that person like a lady or gentleman? Did you act like a lady or gentleman in that? Did you clean those dishes like you're preparing it for ladies and gentlemen, or did you do it just kind of half-baked, right? It's a guiding, governing principle that builds meaning into their work. What is your BAM? Turn to somebody real quick and just tell them what your company's is, and if you don't have one, just say, we don't have one, but we're going to work on one. Turn real quick and tell somebody what your company's driving mantra is. Okay, we have any good ones? Anybody got a good one out there? Yes. We do what we say, we said what we do. Does that not cover a lot of stuff in life? Absolutely. Remind me, I need to call the insurance guy back because I told him I'd call him on Friday and it's Sunday and I did not call him. So now, see, you're convicting me already with that. Good. What else? Somebody else have one. Anybody else? In my experience, a lot of companies don't. You want to build meaning into your company and you want to give something for people to rally around. Okay, let's move on. Know your outcomes. Who knows the name Chaz Palminteri? I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Chaz Palminteri. He wrote a one-person play called The Bronx Tale. And it was such a big hit. It was, people loved it. It was a great deal. In fact, movie producers were coming to him. The first offer he got was $250,000. Hey, we want to buy The Bronx Tale. He goes, okay, I'll sell it to you for $250,000. Here's the deal. I write the screenplay and I play the role of Sonny in the movie. No, we're not going to do that. It's too risky. You're not getting it. Now, you need to understand that at the time, he had a couple $100 to his name. He was living in a crappy little place somewhere in LA, didn't have, money to do the things he needed to do. He just got offered $250,000. Nope, not going to do it. Next company comes. We've got $500,000. We want to buy The Bronx Tale, the screen rights. We want to produce this. It's going to be a great movie. Okay, that's awesome. I write the screenplay and I get to play the role of Sonny. No, we're not doing that. Okay, take your money and walk. Next offer comes in. We're going to give you $1 million just to buy it outright. We're going to go make this great movie. It's going to be phenomenal. He says, all right, 2 deals. I get to write the screenplay and I get to play the role of Sonny. No, you can't do that. And Chaz looked at them, $200 to his name, and says, I'm not selling it to you. Robert De Niro walks in to see the one-act play one time, and he's sitting there and he's mesmerized by it. He comes backstage and he goes over to Chaz and he says, hey, listen, that may be one of the best things I've ever seen on stage. That was amazing. It really should be a movie. And Chaz says, Mr. De Niro, I get it. I keep getting all these offers. And he goes, wait, I know. You want to write the screenplay and you want to play the role of Sonny. And he says, yes, Mr. De Niro, I do. And he said, well, you know what I think? It's your story. I think you should write the screenplay, and I think you should play the role of Sonny. And I'm going to play the role of your dad, and I'm going to direct it, and we're going to put it on together. And I'm going to stick my hand out, and if you shake my hand now, we're going to be partners in this, and that's just the way it's going to be. Chaz sticks his hand out. They make the movie. It goes on. It's been called one of the top 10 gangster movies of all time. Huge success. What did Chaz do? Chaz knew his outcomes. Contrast that. I'm with my, well, she's now 20. She's at the University of Texas. We have any? Okay, I don't know if I'm in, well, you kind of got the shirt on there, dude, so that's a giveaway. So she's 16 though at the time. We're at the mall, and we're doing what we did every other weekend when she would come for, visitation, was, hey Dad, let's go to the mall. Let's go spend some money. Let's go buy some clothes. So we go to the mall, and we're in this little boutique store, and she finds this dress that she likes on this mannequin, and she's like, I really like that. I think I might want that. I want to try that on. So I called the clerk over. I said, hey, listen, she found this dress. We went over to the racks. We looked for it. They have some other ones in different colors and so forth, but they don't have the one that she wants in her size. Can you get that off there, let her go try it on? We may want to buy that. The clerk does this. That's just, it's a lot of trouble to get those things on and off the mannequin. And why don't you can you have her try it on in a different color in her size? And then if she wants it, maybe I'll pull that one off of there. She walks away, and Callahan saddles up next to me, made her dad's heart pound, goes, she's not an owner. I'm like, no, she's not, sweetie. Pay attention. I bet you if the owner of that boutique store had been there, she would have fired her on the spot. Or maybe you should fire the owner. Somewhere along the lines, the outcomes got screwed up. My outcome is to come to work and just to make it as easy as possible. Your outcome is to sell merchandise and to build a brand and to create a customer service experience that people want to come back for. What is your outcome? And are you training those? Are you teaching those for people? By the way, who knows the number one customer service experience, a great customer service experience? There's one factor that I think it was a bank spent $1 million to figure out what makes for a great customer service experience, and they boiled it down to this one thing. Who knows what that is to make a great customer service experience? Whatever it takes, okay? I love it. That's not it, but I love it. I had a spine surgeon call me up recently, a friend of mine. He's starting a company. He said, Daren, is it okay for me to put at the start of everybody's job description, the first line be everything? And I said, not only is it okay, it's brilliant, and I'm putting that in a book, okay? Yeah, do what it takes. Do whatever it takes, okay? I love it. That's not it. Any other thoughts? Listening, okay? Listening. These are all great things. So we think, did you solve my problem? How quickly did you solve my problem? All of that sort of stuff. All of that's important, but they boiled it down to this one other thing that might surprise you a little bit. It wasn't how the person on the receiving end felt about you or the experience or the customer service or any of that. It was about how they felt about themselves at the end of it. So I can have great customer service experience. I can call up the IT support line and say, hey, I'm having trouble with my computer and I just can't get this thing to work. If on the other end what I hear is, oh, geez, it's like 20th call today. What is wrong with you people? It's like, okay, do you see the big green button in the top right corner? Yeah. Okay, push that. Okay, it seems to be working. Okay, click. Solve my problem in 10 seconds. My problem's completely taken care of, but how do I feel at the end of the call? I feel like an absolute idiot, okay? So how do people feel after doing business with you? What about internal customer service? How do people feel after being a part of your company? A lot of people go through life like this. TGIF, woo! I talked to a girl a couple weeks ago. It was on Wednesday. And I said, how are you doing? She goes, I'm doing pretty good because it's just a couple more days. And I knew what she meant, but I said, couple more days till what? Till Friday. So many people don't live until they walk out of the office for the weekend. They drag themselves in Monday, and then they're exuberant as they leave the office on Friday. I think it ought to be the other way around. When you build a culture where people are finding meaning at work, where they're really attached to what they do, they ought to be walking in from life with all the problems and dragging, and walking into like, oh, okay, We're here now. This is awesome. That's the kind of culture you want to build. Now you say that's ridiculous, won't happen. Certainly won't happen with millennials. Nonsense. In fact, you know the reason the millennials are so disengaged? There's no meaning at work. There's none of what I'm talking about. And that's the main thing they care about. I can tell you about a software company up in New York, up in Manhattan. Little private company owned by a guy, took real great care of his employees. He was constantly asking them, hey, what can I do and what can we do as a company to make your life better? Here's a couple of the responses he got. Well, I'll give you one of them. They said, hey, listen, we hope it's not a big expense, but it really would make things a lot better for us. Could you put some cots in the office in a room? And he said, cots? What do you want cots for? They said, sometimes we're hot and heavy on a project and it's going great, and to have to leave, early in the night or midnight and take that 20-minute, 40-minute train ride home, go sleep, get back up the next morning, come back in the next morning on the train. It's just a waste of time. Man, if we could stay here and work later into the night and be ready bright and early in the morning, get going back on it, that would be awesome. Now, is that a highly engaged culture? Absolutely. And that's a company of millennials. Why? Because they believed in what they were doing. All right. So I want to talk about how do owners act, and I need everybody right now to do something. I need everybody to stand up. Everybody stand up. Some of y'all are already standing. By the way, I think there's some seats in here. Squeeze on in. I feel bad for y'all who are having to stand out there. Okay, here's what I need you to do. On the count of 10, you need to adopt one of two positions, okay? Either, I just won the lottery. This is awesome. I just made a bunch of money. Or, I am Superman, I am Wonder Woman, okay? It's got to either be superhero or like this, all right? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, go! Okay, hold it, hold it, hold it. Our cameraman was bright, great photo op. Okay, awesome. Okay, grab a seat. That actually has nothing to do with anything. I just wanted y'all to get up, get a little stretch. No, it has something to do with everything. Did anybody see Amy Cuddy's research out of Harvard? There's a TED Talk about it. And what Amy Cuddy discovered with her research team was that the way you use your body, okay, the way you use your physiology impacts your mood. So what she discovered was when you adopt an open position, this is an open position, this is an open position, for just 2 minutes, some crazy cool stuff goes on with your chemistry. Testosterone, which is the confidence drug, that's the, I'm on it, I got it, I can do this. Testosterone goes up, the confidence drug goes up. Cortisol is also a stimulant, but it's the not so good one. Raise your hand if you've ever laid awake at 2 o'clock in the morning for a couple hours because you had a problem you were worried about. I can't make payroll, this is terrible, Those are the worst kind of nights. The culprit is cortisol. Cortisol is the one that's just got your brain and I don't know, I can't make it, this is never gonna work out, my life's gonna be over, she's gonna break up with me, whatever, okay? Cortisol goes down. When you adopt a closed position, so you're getting ready to go into that important meeting and that interview and you're hunkered over in your chair like this on your phone doing this, you're setting yourself up for failure because the exact opposite happens. Cortisol goes up, testosterone goes down. So I taught this to my daughter back when she was in high school. She took the SAT. I called her, I said, sweetie, did you do it? She's like, yes, Dad, I was in the other room doing this before the SAT. And full ride to the business honors program at University of Texas. So, I mean, come on, this stuff really works, right? Yeah, you can applaud for my little sweet Callahan. So how do you show up? How are your people showing up? How are you as leadership showing up? People show up to life in one of two ways. They either show up as Superman or Wonder Woman. By the way, if you haven't seen it, fantastic movie. But they show up as a superhero, like, yes, I'm here, I'm contributing, I'm here to save the day. Or they show up as Eeyore. What's Eeyore like? He just droops around and goes through and everything's dark and there's such a dark cloud over me and my life. How are people showing up? Because it creates the climate in your company, and the climate you create in your company creates the kind of outcomes that you ultimately have, okay? So owners show up. Okay, we mentioned the books. I'll give you a little quick show and tell. This one came out, this was called A Company of Owners. This one's really about what we're talking about. How do we craft a culture where we get a company of people who act like owners? Highest praise I could possibly get for this book. A couple C-level execs have called it best book I've read since Good to Great, so that's awesome. This is called Beached Whale. It's about learning to swim in the new ocean. I go through and talk about companies that are stuck on a sand dune because they missed the memo that, as I say, the world as we know it is over. By the way, I'll give you the first one. So it goes through the book. I never like to raise problems without giving solutions. So it goes through beached. You're beached if you do this. Here's how to unbeach. So the first indicator you're a beached whale company is if you walk around, there's a Dilbert cartoon on every cubicle, okay? I challenge you to do this because what? They're trying to tell you something. So that one, Whiteboard is a hand-drawn, handwritten business book. It's just a fun little thing. They're saying it's the first of its kind. It's actually being translated into Thai for some odd reason. I don't know. That's my first international rights. And then this little gem is called The Sink. And I'm going to tell you a story about it in a little bit, but it's about leaving things better than you found them. So we've got a really great deal. We're going to be at a book table, but we've also got books back here. We've got a little bundle. You want a little Daren Martin library? We're going to give them to you way off of retail. I think it's like $40 for all 4 books. And then we're going to throw in the very first one I wrote that I'm going to reprint in a better format and all, but it's called The Tale of Three Coaches. Great information. So, but I've got an even better deal for you today. So great deal on the bundle, that whole deal, but better deal. Who wants a free copy of one of my books? Who wants a free copy? Who really, really wants a free copy? Who really, 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 really? Okay. Austin and Sejal? Sejal. Okay. Austin and Sejal. What did Austin and Sejal do that nobody else in the room did? They went to the ball. They didn't wait for the ball to come to them. They went to it. That's what owners do. Owners go to the ball. Okay, I need 6 volunteers real quick. Let's get you 4. Come on. No, you already went, Garrett. Sorry. Let's get you because you volunteered, Garrett. Let's get you 4 and you 2. Come on up here real quick. So y'all line up right here. 3 and 3 and face each other. Okay. Over. Yeah, you come over here. If you'll turn around this way, there we go. Okay, face these 3. Now, I want you to picture, it is the first day of basketball practice of which I am the coach. These are 5-year-old little girls, okay? Can y'all act like 5-year-old little girls? Let me see your best 5-year-old little girl. Okay, that's really awesome. It's impressive. Okay, so first day, some of these girls have never even played basketball. But it's a little church league and they're excited and we're going to get this thing going. So I'm standing there and I'm talking to them about the game of basketball. And I'm standing right here just like this, only I've got a big basketball in my hand. I'm talking about this is the game, it's important. This thing is just, here's how you play. This is why it's so important. We're going to have some fun, but we're also going to learn a lot. And as I'm doing that, I just gently release the basketball out of my hand so that it bounces on the floor. What do you think those 5-year-old little girls did? I wish they'd done that. What they did was this. Do, 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 do. At which point, I went all evil on their little rear ends. I said, do not let me ever, ever, ever see a basketball come that close to you and you don't go after it. Do you get this is what this game is about? This is it. We own this. We own the game. You have to have this. This is ours. If somebody other than a teammate has that, you better go grab it from them. You better go. I got a few calls that night. Some moms were like, my daughter's still wide awake. She's scared to death because you're scared. In the future in practice when I did it, we had a few broken bones, but I'm telling you, on the court, they were scrappers. Okay, let's hear it for our great volunteers. Thank y'all for just. Owners go to the ball. Do you have people? There's a in the military they have a term for a certain kind of missile. It's called a fire and forget missile. Raise your hand if you've ever agreed to something with somebody. Hey there, Jason. All right, Jason. So we're going to do the thing. We're going to have this stuff, and we're going to, this is going to happen, right? Yep. And you walk away, and they walk away, and you know beyond the shadow of a doubt that there's not a snowball's chance in Gehenna, okay, or hell, whatever, take your pick, that thing's actually going to happen? Have you ever had that experience? Raise your hand. Okay. So the military has a missile they call a fire and forget missile, because when you push that button, that thing's going to happen. And that's the difference between people. I mean, it doesn't matter if something gets in the way, it doesn't matter if the target moves, it doesn't matter any of that. That thing is going to go down because they're that dependable. Do you have a company of people that are that dependable? And are you being that way with them so that you're creating that kind of culture? Okay, I want to make sure we leave some time for Q&A. So I'm going to tell you one more story real quick, and it's about what we wrote the book about. Walter Nussbaum and I, my co-author, The Sink. And it happened to Walter Nussbaum. He walked into a bathroom at an airport. He goes into a public restroom, and he walks up, and there's a guy that's really dressed up. And he's at the sink. He's washed his hands. He grabs the paper towels. He dries his hands. He grabs a few more. And then he proceeds to wipe down the sink, clean that whole sink. Walter Nussbaum walks in on this and starts laughing and says, man, they sure have some well-dressed help around here, okay? And the guy just kind of laughs a little bit and, goes along with the joke. And then he looked at him, he said, well, you know what they say, why not leave it a little better than you found it? He walks out, Walter comes, he washes his hands, he grabs the paper towels, and guess what Walter did after that? He wiped down the sink, and guess what Walter has done for the rest of his life ever since then? That's become a part. So he tells me this story. I start doing that. I called Walter up one day and I said, hey, easiest book I've ever written. I said, hey, Walter, we wrote a book. He said, we did? I said, yeah, it's called The Sink. It's about that little story you told me. Here it is. You want to be a co-author on it? It's like, yeah, Martin, since it happened to me, of course I want to be a co-author on it. Leave it better than you found it. Great cultures, companies of owners, leave people better than you found them. Are people growing? Are they a better person? Do they know more? Have they advanced in their career in some way? Have they been just improved in all of their relationships as a part of being a part of your company? Are your customers, do you leave them better than you found them? I went into a gas station one day. It's up in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I walked in. There's a couple of gals working there, and I'd been coming to that gas station. I was going for a client, and I went up there 4 or 5 days a month, was working on some culture change with them. And I walk into this gas station. They knew me by now, and I walked up to the counter. This old lady, a younger lady. I said, hey, do you all know how important your job is? They were like, dude, what are you talking about? We work in a gas station. It's not a big deal. I said, no. People come in here in the morning to get their coffee, to get their snack, to get their drinks, whatever they're doing to prep for the day. I said, in many cases, you're the very first adult contact that they're going to have that day. And the way you interact with them either sends them out the door with just the grumpiness they came in with or with a smile on their face. You have a very important job. You should have seen their faces beaming. It's the difference of attaching meaning to even menial tasks. It's what we were created to be. It's been said, you're the light of the world. I take that very seriously. Are you being light? Is your company being light? Okay, so I'm going to tell you one more story, but first let's do some Q&A. Let's just, what are you curious about when it comes to company culture? Yes?
In a perfect world.
Yep. Whoa. Here we go.
In a perfect world, you would actually build and have the luxury of building your culture, then opening your doors and hiring your people, and you bring them into that perfect nest of trust or whatever you want to call it. But a lot of times it's the opposite. You open the doors, you get going, you hit the ground running, you got customers and everything else, and you start growing, you feel like everything's going right, but then you hit that wall.
Okay, what is your name?
Chris.
How many of y'all feel Chris's pain?
So once you find yourself there, how do you untrain? Because people have already trained themselves what they think culture is. Culture will define itself if you don't define it and get ahead of it.
Absolutely.
So how do you unculturize your company and swap it out with the culture you really want?
Okay.
Without firing everybody. Sorry, I keep on going. Without firing everybody and hiring all new people that you then train with the new culture.
Okay. So thank you. Let's hear it for Chris. Great question. And my hunch is it probably applies to a lot of us in the room. Yeah, wait, we're already too far down the road. You know, that ship left the harbor a long time ago. How do you rebuild it while you're trying to keep business going? And it's always easier to build it on the front end, right? If you could design your house now where you live instead of, you know, the way you designed it, you'd probably have a better vision about, man, I really wish we'd put this extra bathroom in or done this thing over there. There is a saying you're all familiar with, when's the best time to plant a tree? 15 years ago. When's the next best time to plant a tree? Today. So it doesn't, what I strongly believe is you can start now, and I'll demonstrate that. 40 years ago, let's say, what did made in Japan mean? Piece o' junk, right? Piece o' crap. When you saw a product and it said made in Japan stamped on it, it was a punchline to a joke, right? People go, made in Japan. Does it mean that today? The kind of products you would get out of Japan? Quality. Would anybody say a Lexus is a piece of junk or a Honda Accord? I swear you can put 500,000 miles on that sucker and not change the oil. You know, it's just grinding it out. I've got a 2005 Honda S2000, which everybody's telling me don't sell that car because they only made them for 4 years and I think keeps climbing in value. But that thing's a beast. Very little trouble with it. What happened? I'll tell you what happened. A little guy named Edward Demings went over and a bunch of other people. Edward Demings, who we just rejected in this country, good Wyoming boy, goes over and starts thinking about manufacturing differently, partnered with the Japanese people, and they began to build different kinds of products and a different process. Now, what they didn't do was say, we're going to fire all our workers and we're going to go find workers somewhere else. They built it from a not so successful company culture to something that, you know, is wildly successful now. By the way, Henry Ford is quoted as saying, why when I ask for a pair of hands, do I get a brain? Okay. Ford was not looking for an involved worker, a company of owners. He wanted to build something with machines. Toyota gets on average 40 suggestions every year from every employee. It's part of your deal. Hey, if you're not contributing, you're not bringing stuff to the table, you're probably not going to be employed here because we treat our people like owners. So you got to start. There's an old Chinese proverb. Yes, I know the biblical version, but there's an old Chinese proverb that says this: the beginning of wisdom is calling things by the right name. So it starts with doing an honest assessment about where you are. Where are we really? In every company, I discovered there's a stated culture, here's who we say we are, and then in many companies, not all, but many, there's a hidden culture. Here's the way things really are. The bigger the gap between the stated culture and the hidden culture, the more dysfunctional the company, okay? We say we do this, but we really don't. We say we're all about innovation and people bringing ideas. And every time you bring an idea, somebody just slaps your hand. I'm not gonna, I almost did it. You know, I get caught up in the moment. I don't need a lawsuit, right? But so there's always that gap. You got to find out what that gap is, have a real honest conversation with your people, and then start some things to close that gap. That's really what Beached Whale is about. I go through and I talk about, you know, skimping on technology, stuff being broken, silos. The bane of every company is silos, and yet we have them in so many companies. I talk about pronoun peril. Sometimes it's just as simple as changing some of the language. When people in a company talk about the IT department, the accounting department, the powers that be, the board, okay, getting them to just shift to our IT department, our accounting department, start to get that enterprise focus. We're in this together. Some shifts can happen in a pretty profound manner, but you got to start and you got to build it. And by the way, I'm happy to have some more conversation with you about that afterwards. Okay, we got time for one more quick question. The questions are quick, the answers are long, so we don't get a lot of them. All right, well, we're almost out of time, so let me tell you one more story. Anybody know the name Clarence Saunders? Raise your hand if you know the name Clarence Saunders. Clarence Saunders changed every one of our lives in a very profound way. Clarence worked at a little dry goods store years ago, and his job was just to fulfill the order. So the owner was there, guy that ran the shop, and Clarence would, so I'd come in with my list and I say, I need a pound of flour, I need some butter, I need some cinnamon, and I need a bolt of cloth. And Clarence would go put all that together. Clarence was an idea guy. He came up with an idea a minute, okay? He was always like, hey, I think we ought to think. So much so that the boss got really frustrated with it and said, Clarence, I'm tired of your ideas. I want you to just come do your job. If you come up with one more idea, you're fired. Well, Clarence is also smart, so he just zips it. So he's out one day and he's walking around. He sees this new restaurant they opened, and it looks cool. And people are lined up around the block to go to this new restaurant. So they show up. He shows up, he goes in, and it's the very first kind of cafeteria model. So you come through the line. You know, before you had to come sit down, you wait, you order, then you wait, then you know the process, right? Drag out these big long lunches. Now you come in, you pick your food, you get it in the portions you want, you go up, you get as much as you want, as little as you want dessert, whatever, pile it on, you pay, you sit down and eat, it's already paid for, you leave. He thought this is brilliant. So he goes back to his boss and he says, I just saw something that blew my mind. I have a great idea. And his boss says, Clarence, you're and before he can get the word fired out of his mouth, Clarence says, you can't fire me because I quit. He walks out of that little dry goods store and goes and builds the very first grocery store as we know it. He says, I'm going to put the consumer, the customer in charge of picking out their own stuff. I'm going to follow that model. It had the serpentine where you would have to loop through the store, right? All sorts of things changed with that. They had to invent grocery carts. There were no grocery carts. Branding came about largely because of that. Because in the past, when I came in and said, give me a pound of flour, you went to the back and dug it out of this big bin. I didn't care what it was. Now, your flour's on the shelf, your flour's on the shelf, your flour's on the shelf, and you got to make yours pop, right? So started putting babies on them, or new and enriched, or pointing to the right saying their flour has poison in it, it will kill you, buy my flour. So, by the way, who knows the name of the very first grocery chain? Piggly Wiggly. Raise your hand if you've ever shopped at a Piggly Wiggly. Anybody? Okay, I was born in Louisiana, grew up in Bangkok, Thailand. That's a long story. Piggly Wiggly. I told you branding had not been invented yet. Why in the world would you name the first grocery chain Piggly Wiggly? So here's the point. 2015, Kaufman study came out of DC. They said they have had by far the largest number of people leaving traditional companies to go start their own thing. It's record numbers. So let me ask you this. Do you think it's the Crawleys that are leaving to go start their own company, or the Stacys? It's the Stacys. And what kind of company is Stacy likely to go start? Something she knows nothing about, or something she's very familiar with? Very familiar with. Is it possible that if you don't celebrate ownership, you don't create a company of owners, you don't tie people to that company, you don't give them vision, passion, something to live for, something to be excited about coming to work every day, what if we could change it where it was, thank God it's Monday, I get to go back to be a part of that thing that's so alive, that if you don't do those things and you don't create that company of owners, that your very best employees could walk out the door to now become your biggest competitors. Let's not let that happen. Go create a company of owners. Thank y'all.